we're going to continue to read about all these different types that are in. Ooh, I'm messy there. Sorry about that. The first one. Okay, well, I'm going to read this top part one more time just so we're all on the same page, so to speak. Our cue must come from the nature of the person, and that is attractive. Perhaps a glance at the most fitting activity or occupation of each of the types would cast some light on the attraction. Now, it may seem excessively fortuitous that the hundreds of work categories can be neatly summed up by a mere 16 vocations, magically to conform to the motive base of each type. Well, yes, that work of best fit is a metaphor, of course, but it may give us an image of the sort of work in which each type would get his jollies. The types are paired as opposites. Following with our thesis that opposites attract, then, the architect is attracted to the seller, and the seller to the architect, the inventor to the conservator, and so on. Again, we must think broadly of these categories, else we lose sight of the intent. The INTP, architect. Our architect is not merely a designer of buildings. There is the architect of ideas, the philosopher, the architect of numbers systems, the mathematician, the architect of computer languages, the programmer, and on and on. In short, abstract design is the forte of the architect, and coherence is the primary issue. Why would this abstractionist find the ESFJ seller attractive? Think broadly of selling. This amounts to persuading another to receive something of value to the receiver. The seller is essentially caring for the receiver, quite apart from the fact that the receiver pays. This is the essential attitude of the ESFJ seller, and this attitude is perceptible to the receiver buyer. He feels this nourishing approach. That is what is attractive to the INTP, architect, philosopher, the nourishment which anchors him to the real world. What attracts the ESFJ seller? Here is a person who, like a balloon filled with hydrogen, is likely to escape the earth in his abstract attitude. He needs to have a string attached so that he can be hauled down to earth now and then. In a sense, he needs to be sold on reality. So indifferent is he to it. Now, the ESFJ, at least 15% of the population, seller, has another likely target for mating, which may be just as attractive. This is his or her opposite on the sensible side, the ISTP, artisan. The artisan or craftsman is up to his eyeballs in the real world, but ironically couldn't care less about the product of his efforts. It's the process that counts. Moreover, he is likely to have some rather speedy machines around to satisfy his hunger for adventure and excitement. So in a sense, he is just as far out of the real world as the INTP in his indifference to outcomes. Here is someone for the ESFJ to anchor to reality, to give to. The INTP also has a second likely target to attract him, the ENFJ, pedagogue. What is a pedagogue? Catalyst of the growth process. Someone who has the uncanny ability to bring out the other, to activate the differentiation or unfolding process in the learner. All NFs seem to have this capability in some degree, and the accompanying desire to exercise it, but the ENFJ seems to have it in abundance. a study of teachers in which all types of teachers and administrators were asked to pick the most outstanding teacher they knew revealed that the teachers consistently chose ENFJs, who had no other close contenders. From J. Wright, Unpublished Dissertation, Claremont Graduate School. This relationship, the ENFJ INTP, can be deep and meaningful for the former and anchoring in a charismatic way for the latter. The next category is inventor. The ENTP, inventor. The inventive ENTP finds in the ISFJ a neat complementary for his enterprise. Complementarity. Complementarity. Oh my Lord. I'm going to try this again. The inventive ENT finds in the ISFJ a neat complement for his enterprise. For in the ISFJ, he finds the supreme conservator. The conservator, broadly conceived, is morally bound to ensure the material and legal welfare of his or her charge. The inventor, also broadly conceived, is bent on replacing whatever tool, operation, or enterprise now exists with a better one. Out to exercise his ingenuity in bettering things, the ENTP is of necessity iconoclastic and tends to be so seen. So he can get into a bit of trouble with the elders, who usually are not all that pleased to see their tried and true tools, operations, and enterprises blithely set aside for the ENTP's better mousetrap. The ISFJ, mated to this inventive rascal, takes on the task of squaring things with the establishment. The ENTP also may be attracted to his opposite on the inside. He approaches the INFJ, but the INFJ is humorously and preposterously different from their seemingly similar ISFJ. In the INFJ lies the soul of the author, the meaning giver, the mystic, the oracle. Perhaps the INFJ is a conservator of the soul, a sort of messiah. At any rate, there is something about the author, very broadly conceived, which the ENTP covets. Prometheus had to pay dearly for giving fire to man. The Promethean ENTP may figure that, though his INFJ mate may not rescue his body from the vultures, at least the INFJ might rescue his soul from hell. And the next one, the INTJ, scientist. Wishing to control nature, the INTJ, scientist, probably has more difficulty than all other types in making up his or her mind in mate selection. Even mate selection must be done in a scientific way. It may well be that the narratives, plays, and films impugning the rationale and objective approach to mating have as their target or our thoroughgoing scientist INTJ. Nevertheless, when young, the INTJ is attracted to the freewheeling, spontaneous, fun-loving entertainer, ESFP. But the INTJ requires that mating meet certain criteria, else it is not undertaken. So the INTJ doesn't often go through with what is begun by natural attraction, since he or she proceeds in a rational and methodical way. The selection of a similar temperament is more likely than selection of opposite, following the assumption that those who are similar ought to do well together. The INTJ scientist is also attracted to the ENFP journalist, probably because of the enthusiastic, effervescent, and apparently spontaneous enjoyment and wonderment this type exudes, the very antithesis of the careful, thoughtful exactitude of the INTJ. And the next one, the ENTJ field marshal. The ENTJ is a natural field marshal. That is, he's itching to get his hands on several armies so that he can marshal his forces and conduct the war as it should be conducted. If our ENTJ is in charge of any kind of enterprise, however small, his temperament dictates that he run it as he would his armies, with an eye to long-term strategies and their derivative tactics, logistics, and consequences. In startling contrast to this, the field marshal is enamored by the flower child, the bucolic artist ISFP, tranquilly ensconced next to Walden Pond. Perhaps the ENTJ wishes a spouse who would share with him on her the quiet of the forest and field, far from the maddening crowd that's thus separating home from work by a great insulating distance. The ENTJ is attracted also to his opposite in the Apollonian camp. The monastic and questioning INFP. What in the saintly or knightly Saint Joan of Arc, Sir Galahad, INFP calls the ENTJ field marshal. First, note the outward similarity of the INFP and the ISFP. Perhaps it is this, the underlying missionary outlook of the INFP. In a sense, both INFP and ISFP have missionary zeal, the former enlisting the spouse in the quest, the latter in the tranquil respite of nature. And the next one, the INFS questor. Oh my God, I said that wrong. I'm so sorry. The INFP questor. Yeah. QUESTOR. The INFP questor probably has more problems in mating than any other type. Let us be mindful of their relative infrequency, about 1.25%. Say 2.5 million people in the USA. Their problem lies in their primary outlook on life. Life, says the INFP, is a very serious matter. Now, when a person makes his life a kind of crusade or a series of crusades, then there's bound to be some taxing of the spouse. If the INFP takes the other tack, the monastic, and the same person can tack back and forth, now a crusader, now a monastic, the spouse will find himself again taxed, trying to draw the monastic out of his dark meditative cave. The opposite of our crusading monastics seem well equipped for this alternating phase taxation. ENTJ and ESTJ both are anchored in the real world with a vengeance. The ENTJ marshaling his or her forces toward distant objectives. The ESTJ administering in a solid, dependable, and traditional way whatever is his or hers to administer. Both provide anchorage to the person who might otherwise get lost in meditation or in crusade. Selection of a mate of irrelevant form, like an ISTP artisan or an ESTP promoter, would not be the wisest of tactics in so serious a business as life. And another, the ENFJ, the journalist. Here is the herald, the spirited bearer of tidings. But underneath this effervescent enthusiasm is a person fiercely dedicated to meaning in life and reminiscent of the INFP crusader. Only the ENFP neither crusades nor meditates, not for long anyways. The ENFP is into everything, frisky, not unlike a puppy, sniffing around to see what's new. ENFP has to be in on everything. Can't bear to be left out of anything. That's why they make such splendid reporters, newscasters, and journalists. Mercury. Now who would enjoy this frisky, bubbly, yet serious person? The Rock of Gibraltar, of course. ISTJ. The trustee. ISTJ who revels in keeping the books in order, balancing the budget, securing and ensuring, stabilizing and steadying, honoring contracts, keeping the ship on a steady course and ship shape, delights also in providing anchorage and safe harbor for the heraldic ENFP. Who else is attractive and attracted to our curious journalist? Strangely, the abstract scientist, INTJ, lost in his abstract world of hypotheses, he finds anchorage in the person who knows what's going on in the real world. So ENFPs can be an anchor, or have an anchor, and who can tell which will be chosen? So crooked. Okay, the next one. The INFJ, author. The Oracle INFJ may opt for the inventive ENTP, but also may go for a different kind of contrary, namely the ESTP. The ESTP and ENTP, to the casual observer, look pretty much alike. Charming, suave, urbane, humorous, witty, fantastically easy to approach, venturesome, even reckless. But one is out to invent, the other to promote. This is no small difference. It takes an inventor to make a mousetrap. It takes a promoter to make an enterprise. To succeed, the promoter has to be, in the best sense of the word, a con artist. He must be able to be intrigued by an entrepreneur, ESTP. Okay, wait a minute. Let me see the whoa. He must be able to get people's confidence. Now, why would a meaning giver INFJ be intrigued by an entrepreneur, ESTP? Because he wants to help the entrepreneur find his soul and his significance in the scheme of things. Similarly, why is INFJ attracted to ENTP? because he wishes to rescue this iconoclast from his seeming folly. And let's face it, most inventions are abortive or stillborn. And the next one. The ENFJ pedagogue, who can complement this growth catalyst. The opposite on the S side is ISTP, the artisan. It is not difficult to see how the teacher, inherent in the ENFJ, would want to bring out the craftsman in the ISTP. If the ENFJ actually becomes a professional teacher at any level, then the desire for complementarity may be attenuated. Oh my God. So that the ENFJ may not be as strongly attracted to his opposite as he would otherwise. But of course, most ENFJs don't become teachers. There being around 10 million of them. Glad I read that little additional tangle. Alright. The artisan, however, has another side to his nature that pops up occasionally, and in some cases is a life theme: adventure and exploration. The ISTP can, so to speak, be wayward, take off for parts unknown. It is difficult to imagine a similar desire on the part of the ENFJ to bring out adventuresomeness. The ENFJ, as already pointed out, finds the INTP attractive. Now here is a splendid target for our catalyst, for beneath the cool, collected, detached, and doubting exterior lies an architect of building, machines, tools, operations, tactics, languages, mathematics, or whatever can be designed. If that is, this latently capable designer can be activated or brought out. Okay, that one was super hard and I'm not going to read it again. I'm sorry. The next one is ESFJ, vendor. We have seen the mutual attraction of the ESFJ and the INTP. The ESFJ wanting to serve as an anchorage for the INTP's flights to the higher levels of abstraction, finds in the ISTP an even more likely target for anchorage. The ISTP's flights are often literal, not figurative. He really does fly. Look in the cockpit of almost any aircraft and you'll find an ISTP. Of course, most ISTPs do not fly in the literal sense, but the hankering for adventure and exploration symbolized by flight is there. And it is this, the hankering, that draws the ESFJ like a moth to a flame. How does this serve the giving, caring, comforting nature of ESFJ? Why, when the adventurer returns, of course, the giver of comfort is there to provide rest and recreation. And the next one, the ISFJ conservator. We saw how the conserving nature of the ISFJ nicely complemented the iconoclasm of the ENTP inventor. There would seem to be an even greater affinity in the mating of an ISFJ with the ESTP promoter. The dashing, glittering wheel and deal capers of the ESTP calls for anchorage. The ESTP tends to have high periods during which there is a whirlwind of euphoric activity. The ISFJ provides and likes to provide a place to crash for our high-rolling entrepreneur. Usually the ISFJ finds employment that requires this ministering, nursing, helping sort of activity. Even so, he or she doesn't seem to mind doing the same thing at home, and so tends to get burdened with a bit more duty than others. If the spouse does not show appreciation now and then for this overtime work, he may be in for an increase in physical complaints and worries on the part of the unappreciated ISFJ. And the next one. Looks like all the birds not followed us. I know that it looks crooked, and I'm really sorry about that, but it's kind of not. No, it's weird, but the lake is super low, and we're on a hill and at an angle, so it's a whole variety of things making it mind-bogglingly crooked. All right, we just got a few more left. Stay with me. The ESFP, entertainer. The affinity of the INTJ scientist for the ESFP has been examined. This type of mating, however, is so infrequent as to be of mere academic interest. The INTJ is a mere 1% of the population, and furthermore rarely comes in contact with ESFPs. More frequently, the ESFP is drawn to the ISTJ trustor. Here is the entertaining ESFP bursting with energy and hankering to put on a show of some kind. More than others, the ESFP yearns for the bright lights, the party, the excitement of gatherings. In a sense, the ESFP is the life of the party. How many times have novelists and screenwriters told the story of the showgirl and the banker, or the playboy and the owner? The ESFP wants to liven up this rock of Gibraltar. At the same time, he or she wants to be settled down by the very stable and responsible person. And the next one, we got about 4 or 5 left here. Stay with me. The ISFP, artist. Pursuit of 2 themes, closeness to nature and artistic activity, places the ISFP quite a distance from the utilitarian outlook. Yet it is precisely that outlook that seems to attract the bucolic spirit. The opposite on the inside, N as in the capital letter N, is the ENTJ, field marshal, the most militant of all the types in his desire to run things. ISFP is most likely to become a pacifist or environmentalist, and yet also is likely to seek out the person who is temperamentally suited to tactical leadership, military or otherwise. ISFP is likewise attracted to the ESTJ, the administrator, the person temperamentally suited to be in charge of establishments. Note that the person most likely to deprecate the establishment is attracted to the head of an establishment. It is rather doubtful should an ISFP actually marry an ENTJ or an ESTJ that there is any intent or desire to change the spouse into a pastoral. Of all the types, ISFP is most likely to let be whoever and whatever. It seems more likely that the latter provides a kind of anchorage to enterprise and to civilization. And this is the 4th of the last 4. Okay, so whatever. I'm not playing math at this time. I'm too tired. The next one, ESTJ, administrator. to preserve the establishment, to keep it healthy, steady, balanced, well insured. That's what is enjoyable and satisfying to the ESTJ. Yet the ESTJ is attracted to the de-establishmentarian, the ISFP. Does he hope to redo this bucolic spirit in his own image? Seemingly not. Perhaps he sees in this person's extreme laissez-faire a respite from the great responsibilities he manages to accumulate. He can, and sometimes does, find another sort of complementary opposite, the INFP monastic. This is very infrequent, there being only 15 ESTJs for every one INFP. It is doubtful if the ESTJ finds any rest in the INFP, because underneath the monastic is a fierce crusader, hardly what he bargained for. He may soon find himself asked to increase the depth and the meaningfulness of the relationship without being given even the slightest clue on how to proceed. His renewed efforts to stabilize and solidify the relationship will only be taken as signs of superficiality and or meaninglessness. And the next one, the ISTJ trustee. Here is the paragon of insurance, preparation, and consolidation. A person with a strong desire to be trusted. Small wonder that he looks up on accounting, banking, and securities with a benevolent eye. Try to imagine him married to one of his own kind. 2 rocks of Gibraltar, each steadfastly tempering the other's steadfast tempering. We can safely guess that this sort of relationship wouldn't work very well. The attraction, rather, is for the entertainer, for the vivacity and sparkle of an ESFP, the opposite of ISTJ. ISTJ is the ultimate saver, who is fascinated by and frequently marries the ultimate spender. Here, they complement each other to the nth degree. Just as often, ISTJ and ENFP occur just as frequently in the population, about 5%. ISTJ find his or her opposite on the intuitive side, the ENFP. Perhaps he senses in the ENFP's desire to spread the word, something similar to the ESFP's desire to put on a show. Certainly, the vivacity and sparkle is apparent in both, and a tribute which must be quite enchanting to the sober and careful ISTJ. Alright guys, 2 more and they're very short. The ESTP promoter. The relative rarity of the ESTP's opposite on the intuitive side, an INFJ, about 1% compared to the ESTP's 15%, means that such matings will be quite infrequent, as they should be. Imagine an oracle married to a wheeler-dealer. We should, however, be mindful that, whatever our own political beliefs, our more spectacular presidents, like JFK, L.B. Johnson, T. Roosevelt, F.D. Roosevelt, they were ESTP promoters without peer. It would be a fascinating study to check on the temperament of their wives to see if any married their oracle INFJ opposites. This seemingly correct, and we can assume attractive choice, is the ISFJ conservator. Such complementarity should work out rather nicely, especially if the promoter is male and the conservator is female. And we have made it to the last one of this part, and then we're going to take a break. We're still going to be friends. The ISTP artisan. The adventuresome artisan may seek out his opposite in the ENFJ teacher. As noted previously, in the ENFJ, he finds a catalyst to growth, certainly a complementary quality to his artisanship. There is nothing, however, in the nature of the ENFJ that is catalytic to the adventurer side of the ISTP's temperament. If this theme is dominant in the ISTP, then the ENFJ-ISTP mating is headed for trouble. The ISTP is at least as attracted to the soothing, hosting, giving ESFJ. It takes the ESFJ's master of ceremonies to get the ISTP off his motorcycle, surfboard, airplane, hang glider, long enough to relate to others in more productive and facilitative ways. The ISTP needs this anchorage, else he wanders off into the frontier. When Horace Greeley said, "Go west, young man," the ISTP took him seriously and went. We are on page 79. The next part starts about the Dionysian mate, and it talks a little bit more about mating, so that's why we made this a whole 37 minutes. And the next one, and then we'll be done with this chapter. So we are winding down. Thank you for being with me. I appreciate you. It looks like our birds are taking off. Thanks, guys, for hanging with me today. I appreciate you.